When you hear the phrase soft as steel, what do you think of? While the word steel might conjure up images such as massive high-rise buildings, where does the soft part come in? And what exactly does this mean in our work and in our lives? Welcome to the Soft as Steel podcast with your host, Dennis Doran, featuring engaging conversations with a wide range of industry leaders around soft skills, how we practice love, inclusion, social justice, and compassionate leadership that's everlasting in the workplace. And now, here's Dennis Doran.
I am delighted to have as my guest today, Doreen Bartoldus. I first met Doreen during my tenure as Vice President of Professional Development at the Construction Management Association of America, CMAA. She has been an active leader in CMA for many years, particularly in the New York City area. Doreen has enjoyed a long and accomplished career in the construction industry, beginning her career at a time when she was one of a very small number of women in engineering and project management. She was once described as being bossy. Her reply to this individual was simply to say, "I am the boss." Doreen has led complex, multi-phase, multi-prime construction contracts. Her roles encompass design, resident engineering, construction management, design liaison, quality control, inspection, and testing. Her expertise spans a wide range of facilities, including water distribution and treatment, tunnels, shafts and distribution chambers, pumping stations, solid waste facilities, storm and sanitary sewers, wastewater treatment facilities, community parks and recreation facilities, and highways. I would say that's pretty diverse. She has managed projects with construction values ranging from $1 million to $1.4 billion. She's been an important and influential leader throughout her career, speaking on behalf of women in the construction industry, and in 2022 served as the president of the National Association of Women in Construction. Doreen, welcome to the Soft as Steel podcast.
Wow, thank you, Dennis. That was just very humbled by your introduction. And yeah, you did your research if you knew I said I was the boss.
Yeah, I love that. That was a great interview. It was published, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's start on that thing. So share with our audience when that happened. You can leave names of companies and individuals out, of course.
Sure.
What brought you to say that? What was going on?
Well, I said it because it wasn't too long ago. And, things are getting better, right, for women in construction. I mean, it definitely is, but these things are still going on. These just sort of, different biases that come across. And I'm sure he didn't consciously say it, but it came up because it had happened more recently, like just a few years ago. And I had just taken over a project and walked in, and there were young men and an older man all busy on the project. And the guy wanted to sit down and talk with me. And I said, sure. I sat down and told him, he said, the guys are kind of feeling uncomfortable. And this, he goes, and I'm just going to be straight with you. You're being kind of bossy. And I said, well, I am the boss. And I just said, I don't know what to tell you. I'm just doing things the way I've always done them, and they got over it. I mean, it took a while. That was my first month on that project. And I had walked into a project. They had been together for years, and they had different bosses, different managers, I should say. I don't like to use the word boss, but, when they call you bossy, hey, boss. So, we just managed to continue to communicate and just, move on. But it came up because it was recently, and I was pretty surprised.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not like women have been in the construction industry for just a few weeks.
Correct. Neither have I. And this was a person I had worked with years before. So
really?
Yeah, he was on another project years ago, and I came back, when I came to this project, and we kind of met up again. So he knew I've been a boss for a while. So it was just kind of weird.
Yeah. Let's move away from the bossy thing for a second. How many years in total has your career been to this point?
At this point, it's like 45 years. I was not the typical, I didn't start right out like college, right out of school. I had a daughter at a very young age. I was married at a very young age, had a daughter at a very young age, divorced at very young. So I became a draftsperson out of high school, and I've been in construction and engineering ever since. So it's been about 45 years of working in construction. I started out working with contractors. Mm-hmm. I got my degree at night. I got my bachelor's degree at night. And in about 1993, I switched over to consulting, and I did some design. Mm-hmm. And once I got my PE, I went for my PE. I wanted to get back into construction. So I went back on the consulting side, but doing inspection and res engineering, and then construction management, and then, business development, all the fun stuff to get me here. So,
Right. So your first job in the industry was as a draftsperson.
Yes.
And so, all right. So was it with the thought that you are looking at a long-term career in construction, or was it with the thought that this is a job I can do, so I'll just go ahead and do this job?
It was a job I could do, and I thought I would be an architect. Like when I was in high school, I went to an all-girls high school, and engineering was not exactly a thing for women to go into. My father was an engineer, but I was good in math and good in art, and so I figured I would just go into architecture. And my father had a friend who had an engineering company and was willing to give me a job to kind of try out, being, in an engineering architecture firm. So, and it was hand drafting. So I went in, got trained, and did some, basic drafting.
Wow. It's just, you hear stories about the challenging times for different people, different ethnic backgrounds, different races, different genders entering professional career paths.
Yes.
Whether it's law, accounting, engineering, and you hear this. It seems like you hear and see the same stories over and over again. The people that blaze the trail initially had somewhere in their background someone that influenced them who was in a profession in the industry,
right?
And that typically was a male, and it typically was a male who wasn't saying to you, "I really want you to get into this industry. I really want to see you commit yourself to a long-term career in the construction industry." In your case, rather they said, I've got somebody that runs an architecture firm, and maybe he'll give you a shot, and you can learn how to be a draftsperson. And we'll see where it goes from there.
What's interesting about this man, he had an engineering firm, but he had 6 daughters, and one of the daughters was working there, and she was the one who trained me. So, and she was studying to be architect also. So, it is a little odd. It was a little odd for the time. So, I lucked out and got an opportunity. Yes.
When did you figure out that I'll deal with all the BS because I think this is an industry I want to be part of? When did you make that decision?
Well, I started going to school at night, and actually I took business courses first, and then I started going into architecture, and then I realized it was not satisfying me to be like a design focused person. I wanted to know more about how these things get built and I decided to then go into engineering. So, and I remember telling my father, and he goes, "You don't want to be an engineer." And I said, "Yeah, I do." And but later, he was very proud of me when I graduated and continued on. So, yes.
It's so important, and I didn't realize in thinking about having this conversation with you that we would be able to have this kind of a conversation. But I really think it's important to give folks that may listen to this conversation a very personal account of the journey of someone who now is an industry leader, is highly regarded. And again, you may not view yourself that way, but you are. You're respected. You were the president of perhaps the most at the present time, and I want to talk about NAWIC a bit as well.
Sure.
Perhaps one of the most important organizations in the industry that is focused entirely on ensuring that the industry continues to wake up to the reality that over half of the population happen to be women,
yes.
And we have an infinitesimal fraction of those women engaged in any capacity in the construction industry.
Yes,
so that continues to need to be talked about. So if you could put I know you're the immediate past president as we're having this conversation,
sure.
But having just left your tenure, could you put your NAWIC hat on and inform our audience about what you think the state of the industry is with regards to women in the industry?
Well, you had it exactly right. We have a population that is more women than men, and we have more women in schools and in engineering school. But by the time they get to their careers and then move on in the engineering and the built environment industry, our numbers decrease. And then our numbers even decrease even more in management and leadership as time goes on. And that's sort of that's the tale of engineering and a lot of other industries. Women in construction, when I first started working with NAWIC, which was about 18 or 19 years ago, we were about 10%, and the needles moved just slightly. We're like 11 or 12% now. For the women in trades, we're only like 4 or 5%. The needle has shifted just a little. It's good to see it move, but it needs to move a lot more. So we're still very much the minority, the female gender, and we're working on diversity and inclusion for everyone, actually. So, like I said, I think we're getting better. I think we're looking at the DE&I. The last few years, we're really focused on DE&I. It's making things better for everyone. Making the industry more inclusive for women makes it more inclusive for everyone. So I see that focus now, and I'm enjoying watching the change. But it took a long time. It was a long time coming, and I know we have to just stay on that path and persevere, and continue along. So. So I see great things. I mean, women are doing great. Women do great work in the industry. Where I think when we're on a team or we're a part of a team, just like diversity, I think we improve the team. I think a more diverse team is a better project, a better collaboration, more ideas, more innovation, and I think construction is the better for it at this point. So
yeah. So. The folks that are still resisting, the folks that are, well, maybe they're not. Maybe I'm being a little harsh here. What do I know about being an old white guy? I mean, really, seriously. There is resistance. I heard just as recently as last week the idea that even on DEI, that there are people in leadership of different organizations that are starting to whiplash a bit and say, I don't want to do this anymore. It's enough already. Let's move on. Why do you think they're persisting?
I think it's there's a fear. I think they think it's I don't know, is it called the zero sum, where they think if I get it, it takes it away from them, and that's not really true. So years ago, I remember being in the field, right, when I was working for a contractor, and there were a couple of women flaggers or whatever, and they were in a time when things were slowing down. It was a highway project. They were slowing down because it was wintertime, and they had to lay a few people off. So they kept one woman, and they let the other guys go. And I remember a guy saying, like, I have a family to support. We have families to support. Why don't they just lay off the women? They don't have a family. And I'm like, and there I was, a single mom, going, right, that may not be true. And how can you just kind of generalize like that? Yeah. So I think there's a lot of that sort of ingrained sort of bias that, women don't need the jobs as much as men, or, but I think at this point, it's just a little bit more of a fear, like, are they going to take over? Or are they going to take the job that I want? I think it's more fear than anything else, Dennis. At this point, there could be some ingrained biases. People maybe just didn't grow up with it. Maybe or they're just not educated enough. And they don't understand, or they haven't actually worked in that kind of environment with other women. So it's more of a fear of the unknown kind of deal. Yeah,
it's, the way you say that, it sounds like it's another. In the culture of the construction industry, at the trades level, and you still hear it, even though there's a dire need to try to get the younger generations interested in the industry at all levels, through the college route into engineering and construction management. But there's a significant need at the tools and the trades level, right? To try to get young people into the industry. And one of the cultural things that again also seems to persist is this notion on the part of the folks who have a lot of experience in the tools and the trade, not being willing to be part of the transfer of knowledge and understanding about their trades, right, to younger people, with their rejoinder being because they'll take my job. They'd rather have 3 or 4 apprentices at this hourly rate than have me at my hourly rate, kind
Right.
of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, there's that. And then, there's also the other stereotype, women can't handle the job, they can't handle the labor. And that's, the women are proving them wrong. So what can I tell you? So,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. It's in some regards, it's unfortunate that this is an important topic for us to talk about.
Mhm. Yes.
But again, we're not even close to being there yet. I think it's going to take at least a generation for it to happen.
I have lived through a generation already with my 45 years, and like I said, I see it better there. But yes, I think you're right. It's going to be a generation or so to really kind of make things more equitable. Well, hopefully they move the equitable mark first, and then more women will get into the field. I mean, there's so many, because of the ingrained stereotypes. Not a lot of young women even know it's a career they could choose. So
right.
So it's all that, right? We have to change that. Mm-hmm.
Well, those the younger women, the younger females, their perception again is based on whatever the biases of their family and their community is. And again, when at least when I was in high school, again, I'm many years older than you are. I mean, because you started at the age of 5, you began your 45-year career.
I'll take it.
You take that? You'll take that? Okay. Well, I'm from New Jersey. I don't know how to behave, so I say silly things sometimes.
Yes.
But I think the point is just generally speaking, the industry is again there's more and more activity. More organized activity, more coordinated activity to try to, in the words of the director of the Canadian building trades, which is a part of the North American building trades.
Yes.
He said to me in a conversation that we need to tell a different story about the construction industry. We're telling the wrong story.
Yes.
And I think that speaks in a very specific way to what the challenge is, and that the story needs to be told by a wide range of people who believe that it's a story that's worth telling. That don't just kind of flex back and say, "Well, I've tried. We had some little career fair thing, or we had some program at this high school, or we took these elementary school kids and had to make things out of boxes, but we got nothing out of it." But those are all the kinds of things that, again, if you view this as a multi-generation transitional kind of a problem, these are the kinds of things that we need to be doing, and more of them, particularly as it targets women who have. And again, somebody else made a comment that I thought was interesting, something along the lines, and this is not a quote, but my recollection, not being dissatisfied. Because it seems like to this person, it seemed like there's more and more emphasis being put on women in construction than there are men of particular colors in construction.
Oh, okay. Well, that is a problem too. But
well, because again, this is and again, maybe it's because, and I think part of my response to this person, well, one of the situations there is that this category. That's called women. There are women of every skin color, every ethnicity, every cultural background that are women, and they're still, when you add them all together, there's more of them than there are of men.
Right.
And so that may be one of the reasons why we have this emphasis. But then you get also into the very pedestrian biases, like women can't lift heavy objects.
Right.
And I was just in a glass manufacturing facility this morning. And got to walk around to see their facility, and they pointed out to me all the different technologies, the hydraulic equipment, obviously a heavy degree of computerization,
things that help them. Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, well, I think that a woman could use this device and move a big hydraulic thing that picks up with suction cups an extremely heavy piece of glass and moves it safely to another location. I think a woman could probably do that. I'm being a little sarcastic, but I think you get the point.
Yeah, no, there's, technology will help. And like I said, if it's helping a woman, it's helping a man too. I mean, like, these guys wear out, right? The ergonomics of it all. So when things are made simpler or easier, more people can do. And if you think about I'll just say the differently abled also,
Yes.
The things
Well,
that they could.
that's a great way to say it. That's a perfect way to say it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
So let me shift to another
sure.
kind of front of conversation,
Mhm.
because it will segue from the glass manufacturing into this, and that is technology.
Mhm.
When I think of remote controlled hydraulic equipment, I think that's a technology. When I see a computer screen, it's a technology again. So technology to me is not just the highfalutin AI driven stuff, although that's coming around too.
Mhm.
And in fact, I'll tell a secret. The reason I had some very specific words that articulated all the different kinds of projects you'd be involved in, because I went into ChatGPT,
Oh, really?
and I asked them, tell me, share with, tell me the background and experience of Doreen Bartoldus,
Wow.
and so two of those paragraphs that I read came out of ChatGPT. So you are there, you have made it
Yeah,
into
I guess
the
so.
world of. And it wasn't one of those, because sometimes I put questions as I play with it. I'm just starting to use it a bit, and I find it very interesting actually and useful.
Mhm.
But on occasion, I'll put a question in there, comes back, says, I ain't got nothing for you.
Right.
So I got to either phrase the question differently or just figure out another way to learn something that I'm interested in learning.
Well,
So talk about technologies.
yes. Well, just quickly on that, I remember years ago a woman came up to me, and it's when Google just sort of the whole internet Google thing just started, and she walked up to me and said, I saw that you hiked such and such and whatever, and you run 5Ks or whatever. And I was like, I got a little scared. I'm like, how do you know that? She goes, well, I Googled you. I'm like, oh. So anyway,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah.
I'm out there. I'm up there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and technology, yes. I mean, the other technologies are, like BIM and things that are helping move construction along. And technology is also another place where women can really contribute too.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
so there's the technologies that are like, say, physical assist technologies. There's
Mhm.
technologies that can take a place, like a drone that can go fly over, and somebody can fly that. Anybody can fly that. I mean, not me, but like wings on it. And I want to learn how to fly a drone, using AI to do research, whatever.
Mhm.
And BIM technologies, and now they have digital twins. And then all the SharePoint and document the way you can save time. So, for instance, being able to work remotely too, right? So construction, a lot of us kept going to the field, right, during COVID and stuff, but there was sort of this little bit of a pull apart to say there are people who can do their jobs remotely. So that means we don't have to all travel to the site to be there to do the thing, right? We
Mhm.
can do some of these things further apart. And even right now, I have a couple of people who are, working on payments, and they're doing it in a shared folder with the contractor. So they're making real time edits and, that kind of thing. I mean, that's a simple technology now, if you think about it, but
Mhm.
it's getting things done so much faster rather than here, give me a payment, make corrections, hand it back, or even sending the spreadsheet by email. It's getting on a shared folder. The two of you go through the comments together. Things happen so much quicker as a result.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
What's your experience? There are also, there's been over the decades, in the last few in particular, changes in approach to project delivery. Again, at one point in time, we were talking about IPD, integrated project delivery. Now it seems like there's more and more conversation with regards to lean in construction.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had any experience with lean projects?
I have not had personal experience with it. I have taught it. Because
Mm-hmm.
Dennis, I have to go back and just thank you for, like, when we met many years ago when you were professional development, I was professional development in my chapter, and you gave me the go ahead to go ahead and teach
Mm-hmm.
the courses that were being taught at the time, and that turned me into an adjunct professor for
Wow.
at Stevens Tech. So I've looked into lean a lot. I think so now I work more on the consultant side than the construction side. So the
Mm-hmm.
construction contractor side. So I actually have not seen lean put into place.
Mm-hmm.
But the other processes like risk management and, the IPD, the integrated project delivery, is great.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, in my New York City area, they're not really ready for that, but we're just getting into like design build and and there's other collaborative type of partnering type of contracts that are coming in also, collaborative partners or something. Is that what it's called? When I was at Jacobs, they've been talking about that. So, so delivery methods are changing. Unfortunately, that goes a little slow too, and it depends on where you are. New York, we're a little slower at that because they like the red tape and the bureaucracy and the checking, all the checks, checks and balances. So we're doing the design bid build is really still a thing for them. I most of my career has been in a third party CM, overseeing and managing projects. But there's a lot of different ways to do it, and I know DDC, one of our clients, they have tried in the past, like maybe you're not integrated, maybe you're not contracted together, but you're all sitting in the same place so that you're all sharing the same space, so that you're all collaborating at the same time and getting things done, similar to those two guys working on the payments together. So I think I answered your question, but
no, you did. No, that's good. You probably know you probably did a little bit of checking on what I've been up to, and maybe looking at my website or.
I listened to a lot of podcasts on my way to DC last week.
Have you? Oh, really? And yes. were they the Soft as Steel podcast by any chance?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, and how did you find them? How did you find them, Doreen, to listen to?
Well, I drive a nice Tesla, and all I do is search podcasts, and I can put in Soft as Steel, and there you came up. You popped up, and I listened to 3 or 4 of them. Yes.
Good.
Maybe more. I don't know. I mean, and then I also got your book. I downloaded your book, Soft as Steel.
Well, thank you. This is great. This is going to be the highlight of the entire interview, is you promoting me. I think it's a beautiful thing.
There you go. And I think it's great because you made it like a workbook. I thought that was awesome. You made it like
thank you. So you really did download the book. All right, good. Yeah. No, it's been an interesting journey over the last several years.
I'm sure.
And as if you go through the old, I think I'm up to about episode 52 or so. There's there's more than a few people that that I've interviewed, and I've got more. I've got more coming up around the corner. I finally was able to corral Palmina Whalen to have a conversation.
Awesome.
Which will be fun. She's awesome. Terrific. And in fact, it seems like lately I've been inviting and having more women on my podcast.
I was going to make that comment to you, Dennis. I think there's 1 or 2 women in that list. There.
Well, because
so now there'll be more. That'd be great. That's awesome.
I'm going to continue to add to that. I think that's a positive trend.
Yes.
So you also know that that my whole thing, my vantage point, includes in talking about how we are to each other in the construction industry. I include words like love and inclusion and social justice and servant leadership, and also extreme leadership.
Right.
What makes sense to you as far as the outlook that you have towards your industry, how you operate in your industry, using some of my terminology? Does that stuff work for you?
Yes, it's just not the same language I would normally use, but I would say it's what develops my teams. I've always been a group leader. I've always had large teams. I could honestly say if anybody said, I've had a lot of people say like I was the best, except for the guy who said I was bossy, that I'm been the best boss they ever had. But it's really because, and you can generalize about women leadership or something because I don't know, the nurturing thing or whatever. But it's more like you got to care about people.
Yes.
Construction, I really do see construction as a people business. I mean, I learned my engineering, I learned the technical side of construction, but I also discovered it's really about people. It's really about getting along with people. It's knowing where they're coming from. It's understanding what their motivations are. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you or not. Sometimes people ask you, what's your superpower, right? And I say my superpower is I can sit at a meeting and listen. And I may not get it all right all the time, but I listen to people and I start to understand their motivation. I start to see like, oh, that guy's a little angry at something. Let's let him let out what he's got to say. Let me see if I can get something out of that. Or that woman over there, she's being really quiet, but she looks like she's really listening and observing. I might have to pull something out of her later. You know what I mean? So it's I always observe what's going on in the room and understand where the people are coming from in order to help build consensus, or in order to help understand, how we're going to get through that day, right? And building consensus is a tough thing, and I think that's something I've been pretty successful at. I think it comes from that caring, loving, listening to people, and understanding where they are, where they're coming from, where you're meeting people where they're at. So
Yeah.
I think that's part of it.
That's really well said. It encapsulates a lot of the fundamentals of what it means to use your soft skills,
Yes.
which is my term. And, it's funny, I'm delivering a couple of training classes here in Wheeling, West Virginia.
Oh.
That's where I'm speaking to you from.
Okay.
And one of the thoughts that came to my mind, and I'll kind of wrap up at least my comments with that, and that is that I talk with folks a lot about the fact that your reason for existing in a company organization is to do a job.
Yes.
You're hired to do a job. But as things continue to change, as we transition from one generation to another, as we deal with issues with regard to social justice, equity, inclusion, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But what's really important, it's really not about what your job is. It's about how you are when you're doing your job.
Right.
And I hear that kind of a sentiment in the way you described, just kind of trying to read people, not to label them, but just to try to use the information that's available to you in order to make a decision about what do I or do I not say to that person to bring them in, to make a connection with them, those kinds of things.
Right.
And that's all living in the world of using your qualities in order to first make a connection, but then do what I know you've done over the entire span of your career, and that is to build long-term relationships.
Yeah.
Because you and I both met a long time ago.
Yes.
And here we are all those years later reconnecting. But again, there's something in just how this connection felt that suggests that we're both pretty interesting people, and you are incredibly interesting.
Thank you.
And this has been an awesome conversation. It has to end now, Doreen. It has to end. Well, the battery will die on my phone or something.
Okay. Awesome, Dennis. I so appreciate you having me on. It's so good to reconnect, and I think we just have to do this more often.
Absolutely.
And, we'll chat, we'll get together in the field, or, whatever we can do would be great.
Yeah, good. Thank you so much, Doreen.
Thank you, Dennis. Bye.
Thanks for joining us today for this episode of the Soft as Steel podcast with your host, Dennis Doran. Dennis is the author of Soft as Steel and a leading speaker and trainer for organizations across many industries and verticals. To learn more about the work Dennis is doing to activate soft skills in the workplace, contact him at dennisduranspeaking.com. Be sure to check out his book, Soft as Steel, on Amazon or wherever books are sold. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or wherever you'd like to get your podcasts. And please remember to share this episode with your friends, colleagues, and anyone you feel would benefit from the conversation. We'll see you next time on the Soft as Steel podcast with Dennis Doran.
Produced by Audivita Studios. Connect your voice to the world.